Let's get more now on what's happening in Ukraine. I'm joined by retired Air Vice-Marshal Sean Bell. Sean, welcome back.
Sure.
Let's start by what's been happening overnight in Ukraine. Talk us through it.
Well, the big story is these Russia's launching about over 50 of these cruise missiles at targets all over Ukraine. Ukraine has claimed that they've shot down about 44 of them, but the fact is that several do appear to have got through. Russia seems to be targeting critical infrastructure, so power and water across the country. There's been a couple of attacks in Kyiv. Kharkiv's been under attack, Zaporizhzhia, but to be honest, they've been attacks all over the country. These are not military targets, let's be quite clear. None of these targets help further Putin's military ambitions in the region. Almost certainly more done to terrorise the local population, particularly with winter fast approaching. The irony of the story is that quite the opposite effect's likely to happen. It will simply galvanise the Ukrainians' effort to repel the Russian invaders. Interesting, a lot of this bombing seems to have been done by the Russian Strategic Bomber Force. We haven't heard much about them at all. Most of the Russian Air Force has been involved has been the small fighters. They're relatively small and fast, but they don't have much range and they can't carry big payloads. And Ukraine has been really dangerous airspace. It's really well defended by the Ukrainians. The advantage of the big bombers is they can carry much bigger missiles and they can therefore launch them from hundreds of miles away from their target. And it looks likely Russians have been launching these from Russia, from the Sea of Azov down here, and also from Belarus up to the north.
Yeah, speaking of Belarus, there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, throughout the course of this war, of Russia's close ally being dragged into the conflict. That talk has been renewed over the weekend. What's the latest there? Yeah,
President Lukashenko is heavily reliant on Putin for power. It's literally earlier on this year, Putin helped keep him in power when there was lots of unrest. Russia has launched missile attacks on Ukraine from Belarus soil, but so far the Belarusian military has not got directly involved itself. However, we have heard the story that the Kalinovsky regiment, hundreds of Belarusian soldiers, are active in Ukraine. But interestingly, they're fighting for Ukraine against Russia. The logic being that obviously Lukashenko is not a very popular leader in Belarus. If Putin was to fail with his adventures in Ukraine, Putin leaves. Suddenly, Lukashenko is desperately short of support. It's also evident that 90% of the Belarusian military have said we will not fight against Ukraine in that war. So it looks likely at the moment Belarus is going to simply support Russia. And of note, they gave up 90 of their main battle tanks. Belarus does not have a lot of these to give to plug gaps in the Russian military. And that just shows the lamentable state of Russia's military machine at the moment.
The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, is standing at the moment in the House of Commons giving a statement on Ukraine. One of the lines that's come out of that is the Foreign Secretary urging Russia to stop impeding grain exports because Russia pulled out of a big grain deal over the weekend. Talk to us about the significance of this and how it feeds into the global impact of this war.
Well, the British government, as with international governments and NATO, have all condemned Russia for weaponising food. I mean, the simple answer is by reducing the supply of grain to the world, you increase the price of it, and those who can least afford it are the ones that suffer the most. At face value, President Putin is doing this as a degree of retribution again for the drone attacks down on the Black Sea Fleet. But I think that's a bit too simplistic. I think you have to look more strategically at the problem. The war is not going well, let's be blunt, for Putin in the Ukraine. And one of the key reasons for that is the Western alliance of countries that are providing high-tech weapons for Ukraine. If there was anything that Putin could do to disrupt that, he'd be all over it. If Putin can seize the remaining part of the Donbass, which he doesn't currently own, he could turn around to his domestic audience at home, claim success for his special military operation and use the winter period, where there normally a pause in fighting, to start negotiations. Now, if that was his plan, food would be a really powerful bargaining chip on the negotiating table, particularly if the West was involved in those conversations.
OK, Sean, thank you.